The reason I don't like the loot system now is like if I had to go back and choose, I think that being able to choose your own loot preference was way better than just being stuck with one thing, right?
Hello, my friend. Stay a while and listen.
I am Night One. That's my gamer tag. That's what I go by. I started playing when I was 7 or 8, and it was during Burning Crusade. And I got into it because my dad was playing. I would come over for like 3 hours every week, and that's all the time I had to play. And I remember he made me this warrior, and his name was Gluteus Maximus, and he was a human warrior. I always thought it was funny because later on I learned that it was a butt muscle, that warrior's name, and so whenever I was leveling up, people would be like, "That's a funny name," and I'd be like, "Thanks," and didn't really understand because I was a kid. I just played whatever my dad made me, and I thought it was cool. I was like having fun, and that's how I got started. I don't even play that warrior anymore. I still have him around, but I don't play him. And whenever I was like leveling up through zones, because I only get to play for 3 hours, maybe every week or every other week. I remember I met this shaman named Methon or something like that, or he was a shaman, and we would just go through the human zone, Redridge, and we got stuck there, and we get ganked a lot, and then we went to Stranglethorn Vale, and my dad had a level 30 hunter. That's when I started playing with him because I got caught up. Stranglethorn Vale was a pain in the ass because all the like horde and alliance fighting, you just get ganked, and I didn't have a max level character, so that was interesting. But whenever my dad and I were out there, we would gank all the if they were like similar to our levels or lower than us, we'd beat them up. I'm just obsessed with it. Every time I play an expansion, I just find something else to do. And like, whether it be just questing, farming mats, and like different expansions have different things that capture my eye, and like certain expansions do it better than others. But like, the only time I've ever like genuinely been bored was probably WoD. WoD, I just sat in the garrison and I just did not have fun. I feel like they've done a good job of getting away from that type of vibe. But like even in the Mists of Pandaria zone right now that we're in, they had a farm that was pretty good. And that's like the ideal, that was like the first iteration of the garrison kinda. And the garrison like was pretty good introduced, but the fact that everything was done through it was kinda lame. You know what I mean? Like if it was just the farming and the mining and like just having a little bit of extra stuff to do, that would have been fine, like a daily quest. But it wasn't. It was like chores and like clean up your garrison. But other than that, I always find something to do. Like back in the day, I used to PvP a lot, and because I didn't have a lot of time to do raids and stuff like that. But now that I'm older and I'm like an adult and I can pay for my own WoW subscription and I pay for my own like all this, I can play it however long as I want. So it's like I can do more. And whenever I started living with my dad when I was younger, I started doing raids and stuff like that. And my first raid was actually Ice Crown. No. Oh, what was that one before? Is it Trial of Valor? Trial of Valor, I think is what it's called. I went in there because my dad doesn't raid. He just likes to do quests and farm. He actually plays Diablo 2 constantly now, and it's like, you want to play a WoW with me? And he's like, I got my own game. You got your game. You're too good. You know what I mean? But it's like, it'd be cool if he played. But at the same time, I realize he likes his own thing. This spot, I killed a bunch of this stuff earlier, but back in the day, these mobs had a chance to drop this potion called the Potion of Luck, which increased your gold farming. They actually reduced the spawn of these things because you used to be able to just go around and just obliterate everything in this zone. Back when you were level 90. They're level 35 now, that's funny. So I picked this zone because, you know, Karosang or Karosang, Mandela effect. I thought it was called Karosang. Now it's throwing me off. I don't know, it just has so much lore into it. You gotta come here, you fight the Alliance, you gotta help Gigi like fight off the Shah. I think even Sylvanas is here and we help her hunt down the Shah and help Gigi. And then we go to Ardenweald and hunt her. I thought that was interesting. But here, this is where like if you ever read the book War Crimes for Garrosh, you get to come here in the book and basically witness his like court case, and it's like all the leaders of the Horde and all the leaders of the Alliance are there. King Rin's there, Thrall's there, just like this is how Warlords of Draenor kicked off and like basically started the return of the Legion in a way after this expansion. So I don't know, it's just a really pretty zone and it just is full of lore. I don't think it ever had a raid though, or like anything crazy into it. There might have been a world boss. The reason I don't like the loot system now is like if I had to go back and choose, I think that being able to choose your own loot preference was way better than just being stuck with one thing, right? There are people that hate personal loot, right? And they prefer master loot. They should be able to switch from personal loot to master loot. But at like the beginning of an expansion, when you get into a raid and it's stuck on group loot, which is need before greed, and you just roll a need on everything like everybody else is, but he's getting everything. Dude, I had a hunter. I think I'm looted tier pieces and like trinkets and like rings and stuff, and this dude got 2 pieces of loot off the first boss, another piece off the third boss, and then 2 more off that next boss. In like 3 bosses, he looted 5 pieces of gear. What is that? And if it was personal loot, like everybody at least would have gotten almost 1 piece, right? Because like if it's 10 man, that's at least 6 people getting loot, or 6 pieces of loot that people would have gotten. Alright, I'll get it on the next one. You know what I mean? At least you're like almost guaranteed to get something. You know what I mean? You don't have to go in. Maybe you wouldn't get it this week, the right piece, but like if you got the same piece next week, you can be like, hey, does anybody need this? Let me roll it off. I don't need it. But like this version is like you can't even go if you do normal or heroic, you can't roll need on anything in LFR, like the cool transmog. Because like I do T-Mog runs and stuff like that, but it's not even worth my time to go back and do that because like I have all the gear from normal now, and it's like I can't roll need on shit that has less value than what my gear already is. So it's like, wow, why would they like I liked it best when it was master loot, free for all, group loot, and personal loot. Well, personal loot I think was a separate thing, but I think they got rid of the other ones. But I think they should bring all of them back. It should be the raid's choice. You know what I mean? I think the game's moving in a really good path. Like there are expansions that are kind of wonky, but I feel like they always figure out a way to adapt to certain aspects that previous expansions have not been fully appreciated by old player bases. Like I think you can use the mythic dungeon settings as a good example because they started out as just challenge modes, which I wish they'd bring back. Challenge modes were badass. You used to get mounts and stuff. Well, you can get mounts and stuff now from the challenge modes, but you can't get like those cool ass cosmetic weapons and stuff like that, and the sets were so cool. I think Mythic Plus is such a good example because that really is, the further you go, the further you push your key, the more challenging it is. It is basically a mode that they have perfected in a way. Or like the race to world first, right? Mythic guilds just play on a different level, and it is so cool to watch those guys do what they do. And like, you can't even go back and like say, oh, if they ever released, say like Legion mythic raids for classic, right? They can't say they did it world first because all the strats and all of they're not experiencing it for the first time. So it's not the same. They've made raids better. PvP seems pretty well balanced nowadays. I really liked the integration from Legion for herbalism and like ores to be zone specific, and having they made Legion herbalism so fun. If you like picked up a Starlight Rose, you had a chance to spawn an anima or whatever the heck it was called, zombie, and it would drop more of that same herb. Or there was this other herb called fox something. It would spawn a fox, so you'd follow it around and it would drop extra fox herbs. So like interesting like little niche things like that people did during expansions that you just don't appreciate till later on. until it's like gone, you know what I mean? So whenever BFA, for example, there was herbs that spawned by water, there was herbs that spawned, like a bunch of the same herbs spawned in the same zone, so it made it like harder to farm them in a way. Unless they're like a multi-boxer, then you're farming it anyway. You don't really care. You're getting 100 herbs per herb. I think my favorite story in the game 100% has to be Garrosh Hellscream. He went from this guy, or this kid, who was out in the Grand. He just knows about his father's like past and like what happened to him, and like he is this great warrior. Grommash Hellscream is his dad, and all he knows is he's this great warrior, and he has to live up to his father's like he has to fill this like shadow or something, and he is destined to become. He just knows he's destined to lead his people, basically, and so Thrall comes and finds him. He teaches him all these things about the orcs and what happened to everybody, and like why they're green. And when the Lich King attacks, Garrosh moves out to Boran Tundra, is taught by Sourfang, and he has to learn about all these atrocities between the undead, and he has to also figure out the next move for the Alliance and stuff like that. And he's just he basically gets overwhelmed, and it's like his whole life he's just taught nothing but war. And like the moment he is given the role of war chief, it's like they expect him to be this good peace loving guy. He goes and bombs Theramore because like all he knows is his father was a warmonger. He is being showed all these things about war and stuff like that, and they expect him to be a good war chief. But then when Warlords of Draenor comes out, not Warlords of Draenor, so whenever he bombs Theramore, everybody turns against him in the Siege of Orgrimmar, and we go and capture him, and like he goes through this like court. It actually happens here in Karosang Wilds. Can't get a break, and all he knows is war, and it's like nobody is trying to relate to him at all, and it's like the only outlet he has, he thought it was Thrall or Sourfang, but not even then. He couldn't even trust his advisors, and so he decided to destroy everything. He searches for this Bell of Power. He actually crushes the bell over Anduin and like breaks every bone in his body just to like get this Bell of Power. And he goes to the Vale of Eternal Blossoms and finds the Heart of Yasharaj and harnesses its power and uses it in the Siege of Orgrimmar. And whenever we have to go fight him, he has like turns into this amalgamation of just pride and rage, and it's an amazing fight. It's probably one of my favorite boss fights in the game. Then when you defeat him, he has to go to this court case here in Karosang Wilds, where all the leaders of the Horde and all the leaders of the Alliance basically shun him and tell him he's guilty for all of his crimes and stuff like that, which he is. You don't get away with murdering innocents and stuff like that. Basically the Hitler of the game. He escapes and goes to Wad and finds his family and like finds his dad and shit like that, and tells him not to drink the poisonous blood of Manaroth or something like that. And so he hides out there and like kind of doesn't make the Iron Horde. He like inspires the war chiefs out there to make the Iron Horde. So in a way he has inadvertently changed the past. And then whenever Thrall gets out there, he's like all disappointed in him. And if you watch the cutscene, because in a Makara, you're supposed to use only brute strength, but Thrall cheats and he uses the elements, and he grabs him with this fist of earth. And Garrosh is, for like his last words, he goes, "You made me what I am," and Thrall tells him, "You made your own choices." And so Thrall smites him and kills him. And that was the end of Garrosh, which is very sad. because like all he knew was war, and that's all he was ever shown by Thrall, which is he did. That's all he made him. He made him to be a monster. So probably my favorite character in Fairy lore. Scrub. Wow, I just ate that. I said Scrub. Scrub to TumTom. Subscribe to TumTom.